Did you first know you could sing?
I don't know if I was so conscious of it. However, the first time my mother pushed me out and I went, "Ah!"
Those brief 10 seconds from Jimmy Cliff's own mouth now echo like a prophecy running backward through time. From a shy boy pushed on stage by his mother to sing for the first time, to the icon who carried reggae beyond Jamaica's borders and into the hearts of the world. But today, those words are no longer just a memory. They are a doorway into a mystery that has shaken the entire music scene. Jimmy Cliff. The 81-year-old legend drew his final breath after a seizure and pneumonia, a quiet passing that left an impact greater than any stage he ever stood on. What stunned the world was not only his sudden death, but the final message he left behind. A message revealed by his wife, through tears, yet carrying the weight of Cliff's entire journey from a poor child in Somerton to the star of The Harder They Come, and ultimately to a global symbol of hope, resilience, and spiritual freedom. If that message truly is what it has been described to be, cryptic, heavy prophetic, could it change the way the world sees Jimmy Cliff? Rewrite the story we thought we knew about the history of reggae. Who was the last person to hear his voice? And what, in that final sentence, was powerful enough to make everything shift? Mysterious childhood of the legend. No one could have imagined that the journey leading Jimmy Cliff to the moment he left behind a message that changed everything began in a remote little village in Jamaica, a place where sea breeze, red soil, and poverty blended like an unnamed, sorrowful melody. In 1944, a boy with the simple name James Chambers was born into a crowded household of 9 siblings in Somerton Parish, St. James. His father, Lilbert, a tailor, a farmer, and a respected voice in the community, believed that each child carried a destiny of their own. His mother, Christine, toiled from dawn until night, hoping her children could eventually escape the grip of poverty that clung to the village. But none of them could have foreseen that this child would one day become a global cultural icon. Somerton was so poor at the time that locals treated a radio like communal treasure. Music became the only doorway, allowing people to step out of their narrow reality. As a small child, James was instantly drawn to the sounds of the neighbors' sound systems. The crackling speakers, the pounding drums, the ska, and rock-steady melodies seemed to run straight through his veins. No one taught him how to sing. There was no practice room, no stage, only evenings spent on the porch listening to fragments of music distorted, interrupted, then suddenly roaring back to life. And in those seemingly insignificant moments, the voice that would later bring reggae to the world was first sharpened. Young James soon revealed a restless spirit. He often followed street bands, setting his own rhythm, singing boldly, as if he had just walked off a professional stage. By age 8, he was entering small local singing contests, grabbing the microphone with rare audacity. Villagers would say, "That boy isn't afraid of anything. He sings like he was born to stand before a crowd." That fearlessness, the same quality that would carry him through the storms of life, revealed the artist within him from a very early age. But talent in Somerton flickered like a dim lantern in the night. James understood that if he stayed, he would disappear into the same farm and tailor life as his older brothers. His father, Lilbert, who had long noticed something different in the boy's eyes, was the first to recognize this truth. He made the decision to bring James to Kingston, the musical heart of Jamaica. That decision, seemingly small, became the turning point that would change reggae history forever. Kingston in the late 1950s was another world, loud, energetic, filled with the ambition of young people desperate to escape poverty. James was swept into its rhythm immediately. He wandered around cheap studios, listening secretly outside the doors of recording sessions and studying every breath control, every phrasing of the great singers. Whenever he had the chance, he asked to audition. Not every request was accepted. And even when accepted, he wasn't always recorded. But he never stopped trying. This was the period that forged Jimmy Cliff's artistic identity, daring to take risks, daring to step forward, daring to start over. However, the name James Chambers was too ordinary to make an impression. A young artist in Kingston needed a stronger identity, a declaration. And so he changed his name to Jimmy Cliff. Cliff, meaning a steep rock face, symbolized the courage to stand between the abyss and the sky, to face danger, to climb higher. It wasn't just a stage name, it was a philosophy of life. a constant reminder that he had to keep moving forward no matter how treacherous the road ahead. This name change, seemingly a simple artistic decision, became one of the key elements in creating the legend. From that moment on, James Chambers was no longer just the poor boy from Somerton. He became Jimmy Cliff, a man carrying the ambition to reach the world, to break through every social boundary and cultural barrier. During his early days in Kingston, he lived amid social upheaval. Jamaica was moving toward independence, gang violence simmered, and political conflicts split communities apart. All of this quietly seeped into Jimmy Cliff's soul, later becoming the emotional force behind urgent songs like Many Rivers to Cross and The Harder They Come. It was no coincidence that his music carried the spirit of struggle. He grew up in a society where every young person had to fight just to be heard. Yet amidst the chaos, he found the most important thing: identity. Ska, rocksteady, reggae, the three Jamaican genres fused into his own distinct sound. A voice both tender and unyielding. Melodies full of hope, yet heavy with pain. Together, they formed a musical signature unlike anyone else's. Kingston made him a warrior. But Somerton, where young James once sat listening to sound systems, was where the first seed was planted. The journey to the top. No one, not even Jimmy Cliff himself, could have predicted that the boy who once stood outside Kingston studios listening in secret would become one of the first to carry reggae into the world. But that journey began early, before he even turned 15. While many of his peers were still wandering the streets, Jimmy was already inside modest studios, where the microphones were old, the tape was noisy, but the dream burned bright. He recorded his first tracks with sheer stubbornness and a natural artistic instinct, something Jamaica would later acknowledge as impossible to extinguish. Then came the first turning point in 1962, the year Jamaica gained independence, and the entire nation was searching for a new cultural voice. At that moment, Jimmy Cliff, just 14, released Hurricane Hattie, a youthful, powerful track that swirled exactly like its name. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, Hurricane Hattie became a national hit, turning Cliff into a rising phenomenon in early ska and reggae. People began to see the boy differently. He was no longer James Chambers, the poor kid from Somerton. He was a Jamaican star waiting to be unleashed. The explosion of Hurricane Hattie attracted the attention of a man who would forever change Jimmy Cliff's destiny: Chris Blackwell, the mogul behind Island Records. Blackwell didn't just see potential, he saw the future of reggae. And he knew that to make reggae global, he needed to bring its best artists to the world. So Jimmy Cliff boarded a plane to London, a place where international music was reinventing itself, where any artist could become a legend if they found the right moment. London in the 1960s was a wave of rock, soul, and psychedelic music. Yet in that fiercely competitive environment, Cliff shone. In 1967, he released Hard Road to Travel, the album marking his musical maturity, containing tracks that later became classics, such as Waterfall and Wonderful World, Beautiful People source The Guardian. Listening to Cliff at that time felt like hearing Jamaica speak directly to the world, wild, hopeful, and filled with a proud, aching pain behind every line. But all of that was only the prelude. 1972 was the year of destiny. Hollywood called, and Jimmy Cliff answered with the performance of a lifetime in The Harder They Come. In the film, he played Ivan Martin, a poor, defiant young man trying to survive in an unjust society. The brilliance of the role was this: Ivan wasn't just a character. Ivan was Jamaica. Ivan was Jimmy Cliff. And Jimmy Cliff became the soul of the entire film. The Harder They Come wasn't just a movie. It was the first doorway that carried reggae across the ocean and straight into Western popular culture. According to The Guardian, the soundtrack, with songs like Many Rivers to Cross and You Can Get It If You Really Want, reshaped the world's perception of Jamaican music. Cliff went from national star to international icon. The melodies he wrote from the pain of his youth became the voice of a generation searching for a way out of social pressure. In the following years, Jimmy Cliff continued to expand his path. He wasn't just a singer. He was a songwriter, an actor, a social activist. He sought versatility, sometimes controversial, but essential to his survival in an ever-changing industry. In the 1980s, he released Cliffhanger, the album that won him his first Grammy. In the 1990s, his cover of I Can See Clearly Now, 1993, brought him back into the American market. No one could claim Jimmy Cliff was one-dimensional. He sang reggae, but also rocksteady pop and world music. He collaborated with artists from the United States, the UK, and across Africa. He performed worldwide joint humanitarian projects and always carried the message music must make people stronger. Even into his 70s, Jimmy Cliff did not stop. Wikipedia records that he remained active up until 2025, the final year of his life. The performances were fewer, but the voice remained thick, deep, and full of experience. Fans once described him as the shepherd of reggae, a guiding figure. Not loud, not boastful, simply the one who kept the brightest flame of the genre burning so future generations would know where it came from and how it must continue. The shadow behind the spotlight. Yet no legend moves through life gently. Jimmy Cliff was no exception. Behind the bright stages, behind the crowds singing Many Rivers to Cross and You Can Get It, if you really want, he had to walk through countless low notes periods. Few people knew about, but ones that shaped his strength and soul most profoundly. After shining brilliantly with The Harder They Come, in 1972, Jimmy Cliff was seen as the torchbearer who opened reggae's path to the international stage. But just a few years later, the spotlight shifted to another name, Bob Marley. The Guardian once noted that Marley became the global face of reggae, and his explosive rise unintentionally pushed Jimmy Cliff into an unwanted shadow. Cliff didn't disappear. He kept writing, kept releasing albums, kept touring. But to Western media, Marley's name overshadowed nearly everything. For an artist who helped bring reggae to the world even before Marley, that wasn't easy to accept. There was no scandal, no public conflict. Just the harsh truth of the entertainment industry, the spotlight only shines on one person at a time. But instead of fading, Jimmy Cliff chose a different path, expanding his musical style and experimenting with genres beyond traditional reggae. This choice helped him avoid being boxed in, but it also drew criticism. At one point, some pure reggae fans criticized him for being too diverse, too soft, too international, even claiming he was no longer the reggae he used to be. It was the price of innovation, and Jimmy Cliff was willing to pay it. In one interview, he said he didn't sing for a genre, he sang for people. However, changes in record labels' production direction and musical style sometimes caused his career to fluctuate. Island Records. His original launching pad had created the biggest breakthrough of his life. But once he parted ways with the label, Cliff had to find his own path within the massive machinery of the global music industry. Several albums were released without proper promotion, leaving musical gems forgotten in archives for years. Alongside professional challenges, Jimmy Cliff's spiritual journey also drew public attention on many occasions. According to Wikipedia, he once followed the Rastafari movement influenced by Jamaica's spiritual culture throughout his youth, but he later converted to Islam during a turbulent period of his life. Eventually, Cliff said he had moved beyond all religions, embracing a broader, freer philosophy of living. For fans, these shifts could be intriguing, even divisive. But for Cliff, they were his way of finding inner peace, something the stage lights could not always provide. There were no major scandals tied to Jimmy Cliff, a rarity for a global superstar. No drugs, no violence, no sensational romantic controversies. But he still drew attention from time to time, candid political statements, sudden artistic shifts, unusually quiet periods. The public sometimes wondered, where is Jimmy Cliff going? Does he still want to sing? But every time he returned to the stage, the answer was clear. He had never left. Even so, time is an opponent no one can defeat. As Jimmy Cliff passed 60, then 70, then 80, his health gradually declined. Tours became less frequent. Recording sessions became more spaced out. Reggae itself was no longer at its peak as in the 1970s, 1990s. The music industry changed at a dizzying pace. New generations turned to hip-hop EDM dancehall in search of freshness. Faced with this reality, Jimmy Cliff chose to adapt. He continued performing, collaborating, and recording, but at a slower, more natural rhythm, fitting for a legend who had already walked a long, artistic road. The strange thing is this: despite the many low notes of his life, Jimmy Cliff left behind virtually no scandal, no darkness in the negative sense, only the darkness of unseen effort, the darkness of being overshadowed by others, the darkness of aging and illness. This is precisely what makes his life so admirable: an artist who stayed genuine, uncaptured by scandal, untouched by sensationalism, quietly creating, quietly contributing, quietly carrying reggae beyond Jamaica's borders. When a person goes through countless upheavals, yet keeps a clean soul, keeps a powerful voice, keeps faith in their art that is more than resilience, that is legacy. And those very low notes form the foundation for understanding why Jimmy Cliff's final message carried a weight that stunned the world. He overcame poverty. He overcame competition. He overcame temporary obscurity. He overcame the pressures of age. He overcame cultural barriers. The only thing he could not overcome was time, the death that stunned the world. No one expected that Jimmy Cliff, who was still appearing on stage and recording sporadically in 2025, would collapse so quickly. Just weeks before his passing, he had sent a short video thanking his fans for supporting him through more than 6 decades. His eyes were bright, his voice warm, his smile gentle. The same simplicity that had made the world fall in love with reggae. But even then, the first signs of tragedy had quietly appeared subtle, silent without warning. According to Reuters and AP News, Jimmy Cliff died on November 24, 2025 at the age of 81. His family confirmed the causes as a severe seizure and acute pneumonia that rapidly led to respiratory failure. A chain of complications unfolded within hours. But in truth, it was the result of years of a body weakened by age and exhausted by a work schedule that had stretched across more than half a century. Few people knew that in the last 2 to 3 years of his life, Jimmy Cliff struggled with multiple health issues. He had been hospitalized for shortness of breath, had taken breaks from performing due to exhaustion after outdoor shows, and had suffered long bouts of headaches that prevented him from recording as he once did. But Cliff rarely spoke about his condition. He did not want to appear as an aging artist relying on sympathy. He wanted to be seen as he always was, a reggae warrior who had steered the genre beyond Jamaica and into the hearts of millions. So when he was suddenly taken to the hospital on the morning of November 24th, his family and team believed it was just another episode of fatigue. Yet only a few hours later, his condition deteriorated beyond anything they imagined. Doctors recorded that he suffered a violent seizure that caused irregular heart rhythms and a sharp drop in oxygen to the brain. At 81, such a seizure was enough to push the body into critical danger. Cliff was almost immediately unconscious, though still responsive and able to hear the voices of loved ones. The second blow came even faster than expected: acute pneumonia, a common silent killer among the elderly, especially those exhausted or with weakened immune systems. Jimmy Cliff's lungs, already fragile, could not recover after the seizure. The inflammation-spread fluid filled the alveoli, and he struggled to breathe. Even with a ventilator and strong antibiotics, his body no longer had the strength to respond. Reuters described his condition as beyond recovery. All efforts proved futile. But what stunned the world was not only the medical cause of death, but also the final moments. According to People and several outlets citing the family, Jimmy Cliff was conscious at the end. He held his wife's hand, Latifah Chambers, and said a few short sentences to her. No one but her knows the full content, but she described them as a gentle farewell, as if he knew he was about to leave. Sharing the sad news, Latifah Chambers said, "With deep sorrow, I share that my husband, Jimmy Cliff, passed away due to a seizure, followed by pneumonia." After the clinical announcement came the true message. She relayed Jimmy's gratitude to his fans, saying their support had been his strength throughout his career, that he cherished each person who loved his music. And the most haunting line was the one she spoke to her departed husband, "Beloved Jimmy, may you rest in peace. I will follow your wishes." There was no secret quote from Jimmy Cliff's own mouth, but there was an extraordinarily powerful detail. He left wishes for his family clear enough for his wife to acknowledge, yet private enough that she chose not to reveal them. The phrase, "I will follow your wishes," opened a realm of mystery. What wish was it? Protecting the family's privacy, preserving his music catalog, continuing the humanitarian or human rights work he had supported. The media had no answers, and that silence made his final message even weightier. If we connect this message with what Jimmy Cliff had said and sung throughout his life, a coherent thread becomes visible. In his later years, he described himself as having a universal view of life, no longer bound to any religion, believing instead in science, and a more humanistic way of living than dogma. In his music, he repeated messages of perseverance and hope. You can get it if you really want, but you must try. Try and try. Even in his final album Refugees 2022, Jimmy Cliff sang about justice, anti-racism, human connection, and the belief that each day is a blessing in disguise, urging people to treat others as they wish to be treated. If his career were a long letter to the world, Refugees was the postscript, the final signature beneath a message of hope and unity. Therefore, when speaking of Jimmy Cliff's last message, the truest approach is not to invent a dramatic deathbed quote, but to combine 3 layers: his wife's words on his behalf, gratitude to fans, acknowledgement that they were his strength, and her promise to fulfill his final wishes. His lifelong message, faith in effort and hope, and in rising above injustice and limits. His late career songs and albums, where he continued to sing about justice, humanity, and connection. That is his true final message, not a single sentence, but an entire life, distilled into a few lines from his wife, a few lyrics, and a legacy that forces us to reconsider how we live, love, and persevere. A global wave of mourning. The passing of Jimmy Cliff sparked a worldwide wave of mourning in a way only cultural legends can. The moment Reuters, AP, and Die Welt confirmed his death. At 81, Jamaica's leaders immediately sent their condolences, calling him a golden son and a spiritual treasure of the nation, someone who helped transform Jamaica from a small island into a powerful voice on the world's musical map. International media paid him special respect. Die Welt described Jimmy Cliff as one of the earliest architects of modern Jamaican culture, while The Guardian affirmed he was the one who opened the way for reggae to reach the world before any other name could. From New York to Berlin, from Rio to Tokyo, colleagues and artists of later generations posted tributes. Many admitted their careers began with his songs. Young Jamaican artists said they found their own identity in Cliff's lyrics, a connection between hardship, freedom, and faith, something he had expressed across more than 6 decades of work. Fans around the world created hundreds of memorial playlists playing his music for 24 hours straight. Reggae festivals opened with moments of silence. On social media, images of Jimmy Cliff's gentle smile spread at incredible speed, becoming symbols of purity and rare resilience in the entertainment world. But the deepest response came from Jamaica, the place where he was born, raised, and from which he carried the island's music into the world. That evening, Kingston lit up with massive sound systems blasting Many Rivers to cross You Can Get It If You Really Want, and The Harder They Come. The entire city fell into an unnamed ceremony, elders sitting on their porches shaking their heads quietly, youth singing along, and those who had witnessed Cliff in his early days, retelling his story with glistening eyes. Without any formal call, the community organized dozens of small memorial gatherings in schools, on streets and bars, at cultural centers, as if Jamaica were embracing the soul of the artist who brought glory to the nation. Meanwhile, Jamaica's cultural institutions and government began proposing long-term tributes, erecting a statue in Kingston, holding a national memorial service, reissuing albums and archival material, and creating a Jimmy Cliff Foundation to support young artists without access to studios or music education, just as he himself had once struggled in Somerton. Several international reggae organizations suggested building an exhibition space to preserve his career history, including posters of The Harder They Come, original recordings of early ska rocksteady songs, and rare tapes Cliff recorded during his 1970s tours. Yet what lingered deepest was not the ceremony's statues or media tributes, but the spiritual meaning awakened by his death. Fans worldwide mourned not only a voice, but a storyteller of the pain of the poor, the hope of the defeated, the faith of those who rise after being knocked down countless times. His music was listened to again, not just with ears, but with hearts. People realized that through Jimmy Cliff, reggae was never just music. It was the voice of freedom, of aspiration, of solidarity among wandering souls. And then, his last message, though never revealed in full, became the catalyst that made millions reflect on how they live, what they believe in, and what they are fighting for. That very sense of mystery turned Jimmy Cliff's passing into a message greater than any spoken words, that true legacy is not what we leave on stage, but how our music continues to live in people's hearts long after we are gone. The legacy he left is the way the world changed because of him. Jimmy Cliff may be gone, But his legacy does not lie merely in the familiar hits or the historic film scenes. It runs deeper in the changes he initiated, the doors he opened for future generations, and the way he taught the world to see reggae as a universal human language. When people speak of Cliff, they do not remember just an artist. They remember a storyteller who helped the world understand the pride of Jamaica, the resilience of those who rose from poverty and injustice, and the desire for freedom embedded in every drumbeat. The first core of that legacy is the way he redefined the mission of music. Cliff always saw music as a tool for healing and connecting people. He did not pursue commercial glamour alone, nor did he manufacture scandals or controversy to maintain fame. This philosophy strongly influenced the generations of reggae artists that followed. They viewed music with a sense of responsibility to society, to the community, to the listeners. From this, reggae evolved into a genre rich in spiritual depth and social meaning, not just dance or street music. That belief, that approach, is the part of Cliff no one can ever fully replicate. Another major part of his legacy lies in paving the way for Jamaican artists to reach the global stage with their own identity intact. Many artists have shared that it was Cliff's persistent presence on the international music map that made them believe that they, even born on a small island, could reach global audiences. Countless reggae, ska, hip-hop, and even Latin pop artists admit that they felt the door already open when they entered the world market because of trailblazers like Jimmy Cliff. And the remarkable thing is that he did not bring Jamaica to the world through compromise, but through authenticity. That soft but powerful legacy proved that identity does not need to be sacrificed for global acceptance. Jimmy Cliff's influence is also evident in cultural and artistic education. Many international schools include his work in lessons on Caribbean culture, protest music, or the intersection of art and history. Community arts programs in Jamaica also use his music as part of their inspirational activities, helping young people see that poverty is not an ending point, but a beginning. These initiatives, even when they do not bear his name, all stem from the imprint Cliff left on society's understanding. His legacy also lives in the way the world perceives reggae as a human voice. Before reggae gained wide recognition, protest music genres in Latin America or South Africa often carried only regional influence. But when global audiences realized reggae could tell stories of struggle, freedom loss, and hope in a simple yet powerful way, many countries began creating their own local reggae movements. In Brazil, the Maranhão reggae scene emerged. In Japan, local reggae groups rose with the spirit of preserving Jamaica's soul. Across Africa, reggae became a social mirror. These developments may not carry Cliff's name, but they clearly bear his fingerprints, those of the man who turned reggae into the shared language of wandering souls. Above all, the strongest legacy he left is the image of an artist who lived completely by his values. Cliff did not chase trends, did not try to appear younger, did not compete for position as many artists of his era did. He chose to become the deepest, truest version of himself. He walked through political turmoil and countless shifts in the music industry, but never lost the balance between artistry and integrity. That image, a steadfast, humble, human-centered artist, is the greatest lesson for the generations to come. When the world bid farewell to Jimmy Cliff, they did not simply say goodbye to a voice. They said goodbye to a symbol of endurance, a pathfinder, a bridge between Jamaica and the world. But his legacy remains in the people who remember his message of hope, in the young musicians who step onto the stage with an honest heart, and in the communities that see music as a place to rediscover themselves. That is the gift Jimmy Cliff left to the world, a gift that will not fade with time.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore, stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.